Hi, today I'll be going over the basics of the Build an Atom PhET simulation. Start by going to the PhET website. Scroll down until you see Chemistry, click on Chemistry, and then scroll all the way to the bottom until you see Build an Atom. An easier way to do this would just be to Google PhET Build an Atom and then click on the top link. You'll click the play button and then get started. I'll go through atom, symbol, and game in sequence. So if you click on atom, we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and throw some protons, neutrons, electrons into the diagram because this makes it a little easier to go through the settings and see what's going on. So up here we have what element is it? We've got one proton, so it's highlighting hydrogen, and it says hydrogen right here. You can turn off this name down here with this checkbox. So when you have the element checked, it will tell you the name of the element you have created. You also have a neutral or an ion label. When you have that checked, you're going to see whether it's a positive, negative ion or a neutral atom. So that's just comparing the number of protons and electrons you have added. Over here, we have net charge. When you expand the net charge box, it is comparing the number of protons you've added to the number of electrons you've added and giving you an overall net charge. So a -1 net charge, that's why it is showing up as a negative ion. Next, we have a mass number. So when you expand the mass number box, it is just adding up the number of neutrons and protons that you have added and giving you a mass number for your atom. The last setting I want to look at here is stable or unstable. So that's going to be whether or not you're going to go through any type of radioactive decay series. When it's shaking around and it's labeled unstable, that's indicating that this is a specific atom that will go through a radioactive decay of some kind. I typically like to keep the stable, unstable unchecked, especially when I'm dealing with students who are new to the concept of atoms. One other option you have here is you can do the orbits or the cloud. The orbits are a little nicer for beginning students because it shows you directly on the diagram how many electrons you've added. When you click on the cloud, you can still figure out how many electrons you've added up here in this box, but you don't get to see that on the actual diagram. You just get to see a probabilistic cloud of where the electrons might be found. Now let's look at the symbol. The symbol has pretty much the same setup as far as your diagram where you have an orbit or cloud diagram. You're going to see how many protons, neutrons, electrons in this box up here. You're going to see what element it is. You can check element, neutral or ion, stable or unstable. And the biggest difference is this symbol box right here. Whenever we're representing the atomic mass, the net charge, and the atomic number of an element, a lot of times we write it like this, where the atomic number is in the bottom left, the mass number in the top left, and the net charge in the top right. So instead of having net charge be its own box and explicitly stated, we just see a number in blue here. Similarly, instead of the mass of the atom having its own box and being explicitly stated, we just have a number in the upper left, and then the atomic number we have in the bottom left. Now let's look at one of the most useful pieces that I have found for students is the game. The game has 3 different formats, and then there's one section that will actually give you a random one of the 3 different formats. So if we take a look at the first format, it gives you a number of protons, a number of neutrons, a number of electrons, and then it wants you to find the element. So you kind of have to figure out that if you're finding the element, you only care about the protons. And so 8 protons means you've got oxygen. And then it prompts you whether or not it's a neutral atom or an ion. Then you'll be comparing protons and electrons. You have a -2 charge, so that's going to be an ion. And you get to check and get some feedback on that. Then it can sometimes give you just the diagram. So you have to recognize that the red ones are representing the protons, the blue ones, the electrons, and the gray ones, the neutrons. And if you remember from the diagrams you built on the first 2 sections of the Build an Atom PhET, then you'll be able to kind of keep that in mind as you see these in the game. So we have one proton, so it's hydrogen. We have the same number of protons and electrons, so it's a neutral atom. And you check and get a smiley face. So let's go back and look at some of the other formats. Here, we are going to be putting in a number of some kind. So what is the mass number? So you have to know that the mass number is protons plus neutrons. So we end up with a mass number of 16. Check, get a smiley face. Here, what is the mass number? You're again going to have to remember that protons are red, electrons are blue, and neutrons are gray. And mass number is going to be adding those two together. So mass of 2. Here we have, what is the total charge? 1 proton, 2 electrons, going to be a -1 charge. All right, let's look at the last format. Last format is the symbol. So here we have no neutrons, 1 proton. So protons plus neutrons is the same as protons. Here we're looking at how many protons are there. There's 1. Here we're looking at protons compared to electrons to figure out charge. There's the same number of both, so it is a 0 net charge or a neutral atom. Here, same thing, although now we're a -2 charge. Hopefully you enjoyed that overview of the PhET Build an atom, and good luck.